Hello. Welcome to my channel. Before we start, it's a good idea to get into bed and relax. I would also like to ask you to subscribe to my channel, like it, and write in the comments where you are from and what time it is. Thank you. Sweet dreams. Imagine stepping into a world where every creaking floorboard echoes with danger, where the air you breathe carries the stench of mold and decay, and the shadows whisper secrets you're not meant to hear. Welcome to life in a medieval castle, a place of grandeur and power, yes, but also a prison of relentless cold, crawling vermin, and horrors that would turn a modern soul pale. In this story, you'll see what it truly meant to survive behind those thick stone walls. Spoiler, you wouldn't last a day. The walls are stone, and stone is cold. Even in summer, the chill seeps into your bones, and at night, it wraps around you like a second skin. Fireplaces are few, drafts are many, and if you thought that warm blanket would save you, you're wrong. In this castle, warmth is a luxury few can afford, and your body quickly learns the hard way that shivering is just the beginning. Rats and mice are everywhere. They scurry across the floors, gnaw on scraps, and sometimes, just sometimes, climb into the beds of careless servants. Food is scarce, and what there is often covered in mold or crawling with insects. Bread is hard, cheese is slimy, and meat is a gamble. One bite could send you straight to the grave. Every meal is a fight for survival, every morsel a test of your courage. And the nights, oh, the nights. The servants whisper about spirits, shadows that move when no one is looking. The corridors echo with strange sounds, scratching, whispering, a sudden drop of water in the darkness. Sometimes you swear you see a figure at the end of a hallway, and sometimes, it seems to vanish before your eyes. Sleep is impossible when you know the castle's history is soaked in blood and secrets, and every creak might be your last. But it's not all fear and darkness. There is life, and stories, and the occasional flicker of beauty, a moonlight glinting off a stone wall, the distant laugh of a noble enjoying a feast, or the quiet bravery of those who manage to survive here. In this story, you will follow one unlucky soul as they attempt to navigate the horrors, oddities, and daily trials of life inside a medieval castle. From the crawling vermin and spoiled food to the chilling ghost stories whispered by the staff, every moment is a test of endurance, and every night brings new terror. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why, in the harsh reality of the Middle Ages, many people wouldn't last a day inside these walls. This isn't a fairy tale, this is survival, and it's brutal, relentless, and disturbingly real. Are you ready to step inside? The first thing you notice when you step through the massive oak doors of a medieval castle is the smell. It hits you before anything else, a mixture of damp stone, rotting wood, and something fouler, a tang of old food and, something you can't quite name, like decay itself. You had imagined castles as majestic, glittering halls full of royalty and chivalry. You hadn't imagined the cold seeping through your cloak, the chill wrapping around your bones like icy chains, nor the tiny creatures darting across the stone floor, too quick for your eyes to follow. The guards barely glance at you as they lead you down a corridor lined with torches. Their faces are impassive, hardened from years of life in the cold, stone prison they call home. Every step echoes loudly in the narrow hallway, the sound bouncing off the walls, reminding you how thin your courage really is. Behind the doors along the hall, shadows flicker, hinting at movement, but when you look closer, nothing is there. Just the castle breathing, ancient and watchful. You are shown your quarters, a small room with a narrow bed and a window too high to see the world outside clearly. The floor is cold stone, the air damp and smelling faintly of mildew. Your heart sinks when you see the bedding, rough, scratchy cloth stacked in a heap, hardly enough to keep the cold away. You attempt to sit on the bed, and it squeaks under your weight. You realize you might never get used to the constant noises, rats scurrying, the wind whistling through cracks, and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling above. Food is brought to you, though calling it food is a stretch. Bread, hard as stone, a smear of mold on the edges. Cheese that has begun to sweat and change color. A small piece of meat, grayish, smelling faintly sour, almost daring you to eat it. The servants watch you with a mixture of pity and amusement, knowing full well that your modern stomach will likely reject this diet. You eat anyway, because what choice do you have? Hunger is a cruel teacher, and in the castle, it is ever present. Night falls quickly. The torches are extinguished, leaving only the faint glow from a distant corridor. You hear the stories the servants whispered while preparing your meager meal, tales of ghosts that roam the halls, shadows that move when no one is watching, of nobles who died tragically, their spirits refusing to leave the stone walls they once ruled. You try to laugh it off, but the laughter dies in your throat when a cold draft brushes your neck and you swear you hear a faint whisper. You pull the blanket tighter around yourself and lie awake, shivering, listening to the castle breathe. In the darkness, you realize the rats are fearless. One scurries across the floor, pausing to sniff near your bed. You hold your breath, hoping it won't notice you. Another scratches somewhere in the walls, just out of reach. You start to understand the servants' tales of vermin. Living in close quarters with creatures that share your space is unnerving, especially when the castle is so quiet that every tiny noise becomes amplified. Your mind races, imagining them crawling over you in your sleep. You tell yourself it's impossible, yet you cannot shake the images. Time becomes distorted. The hours stretch as you lie on the rough bedding, listening to every creak and groan of the castle. You try to remember the warmth of your home, the comfort of soft beds and clean air, but those memories feel distant and fragile. Here, in the stone labyrinth of this medieval fortress, survival is not about strength or courage alone, it's about patience, attention, and sheer stubbornness. Every sound, every shadow, is a test of your nerves. Every bite of questionable food is a risk, every draught a reminder that you are small and mortal in this vast, ancient structure. As you finally drift into uneasy sleep, you dream not of dragons or heroic battles, but of shadows moving along stone walls, of cold fingers brushing your skin, and the skittering of tiny feet across the floor. And in the morning, you will wake to a new day of the same horrors, knowing that the castle does not care for your comfort or survival. Morning in the castle arrives not with birdsong or sunlight streaming through windows, but with the harsh clang of a bell and the scraping of wooden shoes against stone. The air is still damp, carrying the lingering chill of night, and your teeth chatter involuntarily as you rise from the rough bedding. You already know that nothing about this place is designed for comfort. Stone walls absorb warmth, leaving the rooms icy even when the sun climbs high. Your first task is simple, yet exhausting: find breakfast. The castle kitchen is a dim, smoky chamber where servants move with practiced efficiency, dodging flames and boiling pots. You are handed another portion of hard bread and some water from a wooden cup. It tastes sour, and you wonder what it's been sitting in, but swallowing it is not optional. Hunger is the great equalizer here. A mouse darts across the floor, disappearing under a table, and a shiver runs down your spine. You are sharing space with creatures that have no fear, creatures that will eat anything, including scraps that you might hope to save for later. The day is long and monotonous, yet exhausting. You follow the servants as they clean halls, scrub floors, and carry buckets of water from the well. The work is relentless, and the cold stone and damp floors make every step a challenge. Even simple movements leave your hands raw and your back aching. The air smells faintly of mildew and smoke, and each inhalation reminds you that cleanliness is a luxury here. Washing your hands is only possible if you are careful, and even then, the water is cold and bitter. Food remains a constant worry. Bread is hard, cheese is moldy, and meat is gray and suspicious. The castle has no refrigerators, no modern preservation methods, decay is natural here, and what doesn't rot outright is infested with insects. You try to avoid the flies hovering over the bread and the small black bugs that crawl across the cheese, but sometimes survival means ignoring your instincts. One careless bite and you risk stomach cramps or worse. The servants have long grown accustomed to this diet, but for you, each meal is a test of endurance and courage. By midday, you are exhausted but cannot rest. The castle is a living entity, always moving, always noisy. The rats and mice are everywhere, fearless in their exploration. You see one slip through a crack in the wall, its beady eyes glinting in the dim light. You catch glimpses of others skittering along rafters or disappearing into shadowed corners. You realize that every corner of this fortress is alive with creatures that thrive on human negligence. You cannot ignore them, nor can you fully escape them. The corridors themselves seem to have a life of their own. You hear faint whispers echoing down halls, and for a moment, you convince yourself it's the wind. Then, a shadow moves along the wall, a flicker that disappears when you focus on it. The servants have warned you about this, ghosts of nobles, betrayed knights, or unfortunate servants who never left these halls. You laugh nervously, trying to convince yourself it's imagination, but the castle is too quiet, too expectant, and the shadows too deliberate. You feel eyes on you from places that should be empty, and you understand why the servants speak in hushed tones. As evening approaches, the chill intensifies. The sun dips behind thick stone towers, and darkness falls quickly. You are handed another meager portion of food and a cup of water. The smell of mold is stronger at night, and your stomach turns at the sight. You eat anyway, knowing that to refuse is to invite weakness. You hear the soft scratching of rats in the walls, the occasional thump from above, perhaps a loose floorboard, perhaps something heavier. You cover your ears with trembling hands, wishing the night would pass, yet knowing full well that sleep is no friend here. Night brings a new kind of terror. The servants' stories of spirits become more believable in the darkness. Corridors stretch endlessly, shadows twist unnaturally, and the cold seeps deeper than ever. You swear you hear whispering just beyond your door, and when you approach, the hall is empty. Your imagination plays tricks, yet the fear is real, visceral, and inescapable. You realize that in the medieval castle, danger is not always visible, and the unknown is more frightening than anything tangible. Finally, you crawl into the rough bedding, every fiber of your being aching from the day. The cold wraps around you like a second skin, and you hear the scurrying of rats growing bolder as the castle settles into night. Shadows stretch across the room in the flickering torchlight, and your mind conjures the stories you've heard, restless spirits, betrayed souls, and long-forgotten victims of castle life. Sleep is elusive. Each sound, each movement, each whisper keeps you on edge, reminding you that survival here is not guaranteed, and that one mistake could make your day, and perhaps your life, end far sooner than you imagined. Night deepens in the castle, and the darkness seems almost alive. The torchlight flickers weakly, casting long, twisting shadows across the cold stone walls. Every step you take echoes like a drumbeat, making you feel as though the entire fortress is aware of your presence. You clutch your thin blanket tighter, listening to the scratching of rats in the walls and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. In this place, silence is a rarity, and when it comes, it feels unnatural, almost threatening. The servants had warned you about the shadows. They move when you aren't looking, one whispered, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that only long years of survival can teach. You had laughed at first, attributing it to tired superstition. Now, however, as you glance down a dim corridor and see what seems like a figure vanish into the wall, your laughter dies in your throat. The castle is old, older than anyone alive, and it is said that some spirits never leave. Betrayed nobles, murdered servants, and knights who fell in battle, all linger here, bound by anger, fear, or unfinished business. You attempt to reassure yourself with logic, it's shadows, it's flickering light, it's your imagination. Yet, the whispers persist. Soft, indecipherable murmurs drift down the hall, brushing past your ears. You strain to listen, your pulse quickening. The sound of footsteps that aren't yours makes your heart hammer against your chest. Sometimes, the whispers form words, though you can't understand them, and a cold chill slides down your spine. The castle doesn't just house the living, it remembers the dead. Hunger gnaws at you, but food is scarce at this hour. The bread you ate hours ago still tastes like sawdust in your mouth, and the moldy cheese lingers unpleasantly. Yet survival demands that you forage what you can. You move silently through the dark corridors to the kitchen, careful not to alert anyone, or anything, that you're there. The rats are bold, crossing your path with little fear, and you are reminded that in this place, you are not the top of the food chain. Every creature, every shadow, every sound demands your attention. Suddenly, a floorboard creaks loudly above you. You freeze, holding your breath, and the echo bounces down the stone hallway. For a moment, you convince yourself it's simply a servant moving about, but the sound is slow, deliberate, and deliberate sounds in the dead of night rarely belong to the living. Your imagination spirals, picturing a figure standing at the top of the stairs, watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake. The castle seems to pulse with anticipation, as though it delights in testing your courage. As you retreat to your room, the shadows seem to shift in impossible ways. Shapes twist along the walls, and for a fleeting moment, a silhouette resembling a long-dead knight appears at the far end of the corridor. It disappears when you blink. You shake your head, trying to calm yourself. The stories were true, at least in part. Life in a medieval castle is a constant balance between fear and endurance, and in the darkness, the fear is magnified. The walls themselves are alive with memory, carrying whispers from centuries past. You return to your bed, but sleep remains elusive. Each sound, a distant thud, a scratching in the wall, a creak from the ceiling above, reminds you that you are not alone. You tell yourself it's only rats, the wind, or old timber settling, but you can't fully believe it. The air is cold and damp, seeping through the rough blanket and biting at your skin. You curl into yourself, wishing for warmth that will not come. Outside, the moonlight glances off the stone, casting eerie shapes that twist and dance across your room. Hours drag by. You count each creak, each whisper, each shadow. Exhaustion overtakes fear briefly, but even in your drifting moments, the whispers return, the shadows stretch further, and the cold penetrates deeper. You dream, but the dreams are not comforting. Figures loom over you, rats swarm, and faces of long-dead nobles glare in accusation. When you wake, you are more exhausted than before, your body aching, your mind frayed. By the time dawn finally creeps through the high windows, you are trembling from cold, hunger, and fear. The castle's horrors are relentless, unyielding, and intimately familiar now. You realize that surviving even a single night is an accomplishment, a small victory in a war against the castle itself. The ancient stones have claimed countless souls, and you are painfully aware that they do not intend to release you easily. Each day will bring more trials, more hunger, more darkness, and more whispers from the past that will haunt your every step. The morning light is weak, barely penetrating the thick stone walls. You rise from the scratchy bedding, shivering despite the first rays of sun. The castle has a way of stealing warmth from your body no matter the hour. As you step out into the hallway, your eyes catch movement along the edges of the floor. Rats, big, bold, and unafraid, scurry in every direction. You realize they do not flee from you, the castle is their domain, and you are merely a temporary intruder. Your first task is food, yet even this mundane survival task is a trial. The bread is hard, mold creeping along its edges like a warning, and the cheese is slimy, smelling faintly of ammonia. You hesitate, but hunger demands you eat. One bite sends a shiver down your spine as the texture and taste almost revolt your senses. Meat is an even greater gamble. Gray and fibrous, with tiny black specks that your mind insists are worms, it forces you to question whether survival is worth the risk of illness. Yet in this castle, refusal is not an option. To starve is far worse than to risk sickness. The corridors are alive with sound. Rats scratch at the walls, scamper across the floors, and sometimes vanish into unseen holes. You startle as one appears on the hearth, sniffing at discarded crumbs, and you retreat quickly. The servants, long accustomed to this life, move with calm efficiency. You envy their detachment. Their eyes are sharp, always alert, always scanning for the tiny predators and hazards that share every corner of this castle. You realize that surviving here is as much about awareness as it is about endurance. Humidity and decay are constant companions. The air clings to your skin, and a faint smell of mildew hovers everywhere. Stone walls sweat, and water drips incessantly from ceilings and corners. In some rooms, pools of stagnant water have gathered, dark and almost black with rot. The floorboards creak under your weight, and the dampness seeps into your shoes, making each step a cold, wet reminder of the castle's hostility. Even when idle, you are never comfortable. The stone, the mold, the cold, and the vermin work together to sap your strength. And then there are the shadows, the subtle, intangible presence that seems to watch you, follow you, and occasionally brush against the edge of your vision. The servants speak of spirits who linger, of nobles who died in betrayal or battle and cannot rest. You try to rationalize, telling yourself it's only imagination, only flickering light, only fatigue. Yet as you glance down a corridor and see what seems like a figure vanish around a corner, you pause. Logic falters. The castle is old, old enough that the air itself seems infused with memory. Every stone remembers. Nightfall brings a different sort of terror. The cold deepens, and the rats become bolder, their tiny claws scratching across floors and walls. Shadows lengthen and twist with the faint flicker of torches. You hear whispers, soft and unintelligible, drifting through corridors, carried by drafts that seem to know exactly where to touch. You feel eyes on you, whether human or not, and your muscles tighten in anticipation. Sleep is fleeting, filled with dreams of crawling creatures, shadowy figures, and hunger gnawing at your belly. You attempt to eat again, trying to force down another portion of the same gray, mold-spotted food. Each bite is a test of resolve, each swallow a small victory over your instincts. Outside your room, the faint noises of the castle never cease, rats, dripping water, and the distant echo of footsteps that may belong to no living being. The castle's sounds are relentless, a constant reminder that life here is never simple, never safe. As the hours drag on, your body aches, your stomach twists, and your mind is frayed by the unending stress. You begin to understand why so many never lasted more than a few days inside these walls. It is not battle that will claim you here, not even disease alone, but the combination of cold, hunger, vermin, decay, and the psychological weight of living in a fortress that seems to watch, judge, and challenge every move you make. By the end of the day, you retreat once more to your bedding, shivering, exhausted, and vaguely nauseous. The flickering torchlight casts long, dancing shadows across the walls, and the whispers continue, sometimes louder, sometimes fainter. Rats scurry across the floors, and water drips steadily from the ceilings. You close your eyes, wishing for comfort, warmth, and peace, yet knowing that the castle offers none. In the medieval world, survival is a cruel, relentless task, and here, in these ancient stone walls, you are reminded with every breath, every sound, every shadow, that you would not last a day. The castle is full of secrets, and many of them are dangerous. As you explore the halls during the day, you notice cracks in the stone floors and walls, small holes in corners, and trapdoors that blend seamlessly into the shadows. The servants avoid these areas without thinking, but for you, every step is a potential hazard. One misstep could send you tumbling into darkness or sharp timber. You realize that surviving here is not just about enduring cold or hunger, it's about constant vigilance. Rats are not the only threat. In some corners, you find evidence of larger predators, foxes, feral cats, or dogs that roam the outer halls at night, drawn by the scent of scraps. They move silently, stalking the floors for easy prey. Occasionally, a loud crash above startles you, a servant dropping a heavy bucket, perhaps, or a loose shutter banging in the wind, but the effect is the same, your heart races, your muscles tense, and you feel completely exposed. The castle tests every sense, every reflex, and every ounce of courage you have. Illness is another silent danger. Mold in the food, damp walls, and contaminated water create conditions perfect for sickness. A headache creeps in, followed by chills. Your stomach twists painfully from a small bite of spoiled cheese. You know that medical care is primitive at best. The local healer might apply a poultice or chant a prayer, but disease spreads quickly, and death is always nearby. Hygiene is minimal. Hands are washed only when convenient, and the servants themselves carry lice and other pests, leaving you vulnerable to infestations. By evening, exhaustion sets in more profoundly. The corridors seem longer, darker, and the shadows more deliberate. You see shapes at the edges of your vision, perhaps rats, perhaps something else. The whispers return, clearer now, and for a fleeting moment, you feel as though the air itself is moving against you, pressing cold fingers down your spine. The castle seems alive, not with people, but with memory, malice, and watchfulness. The night is worse. Darkness hides every threat. Rats scurry boldly, climbing walls, exploring ceilings, even venturing into sleeping quarters. Shadows twist in impossible ways, and the whispers form eerie patterns, repeating phrases you cannot comprehend but feel in your very bones. Sleep is intermittent, filled with dreams of falling, of being gnawed by vermin, or pursued by shadowy figures. You awaken more exhausted than before, your body aching, and your mind frayed from constant tension. As hours pass, the castle shows you yet another side of its cruelty. The dampness makes the air heavy, your clothes cling to your skin, and mold spores irritate your throat. You cough, and a wave of nausea reminds you that your body is failing in small but insidious ways. Food does little to help, each meal is more a survival tactic than nourishment. You count each bite, rationing what you can, knowing that indulgence could be fatal, yet deprivation is almost as punishing. The shadows of the night are relentless. You see fleeting figures at the end of corridors, but they vanish when approached. Whispers rise and fall, like waves in a storm, carrying stories of the long dead, of nobles murdered for ambition or servants betrayed for mischief. You cannot tell what is real, what is imagined, or what is a combination of both. Your mind struggles to maintain sanity, to differentiate danger from illusion. Every noise, every flicker of light, every movement in the darkness is a test of your nerves. When morning finally comes, it brings no relief. You are weary, hungry, and haunted, but the cycle begins anew. The castle does not forgive weakness, nor does it reward inexperience. You have learned more about survival than you ever wanted: vigilance, patience, endurance, and the ability to accept discomfort as a constant companion. You realize that each day survived is a victory, though a hollow one, for the castle is relentless and will continue to demand obedience, alertness, and courage, until exhaustion or illness claims you. By the time you lie down for a final rest, you know an undeniable truth: life inside a medieval castle is a test of endurance that few can pass. The cold, the rats, the moldy food, the shadows, and the ghosts, all combine to create an environment where survival is never guaranteed. You are a small, fragile creature inside a vast, ancient fortress, constantly reminded of your mortality, your vulnerability, and the merciless nature of medieval life. Night descends like a heavy blanket, thick and suffocating. The stone corridors swallow every faint light, leaving shadows that seem almost tangible. Every creak of timber, every drip of water, every tiny scuttling of rats becomes amplified, echoing as if the castle itself is alive and watching. You clutch your thin blanket tighter, heart racing, realizing that the castle does not forgive fatigue. Every moment of inattention could become a hazard. The whispers are louder tonight. They thread through the hallways like silk, soft yet insistent, teasing your senses. Sometimes they form phrases, fragments of long-forgotten conversations, curses, and cries of pain. You strain to make sense of them, but comprehension is impossible. The air feels thick, almost sticky, pressing against your skin as if it knows your fear. The castle has learned to exploit every weakness, turning imagination into terror, and terror into sleeplessness. Rats move with astonishing boldness. One scrambles across your feet while you attempt to sleep, and you spring up, your heart hammering. The creatures are fearless, the castle nurtures their audacity. You realize that in this environment, you are no longer the dominant force, you are prey. Your mind races, imagining rats in the shadows, crawling, gnawing, swarming, and there is nowhere in the castle you can consider truly safe. Even your bed is compromised. The shadows shift unnaturally, stretching along walls, moving against the flickering torchlight in impossible ways. You see a silhouette at the far end of a hallway, tall, unmoving, watching. When you blink, it is gone. Every instinct tells you to run, yet every step echoes, drawing attention. You feel eyes from somewhere beyond the visible, a presence that is not alive yet feels undeniably sentient. Sleep, when it comes, is haunted by visions, figures reaching from the corners, floors collapsing beneath you, rats overwhelming you in endless swarms. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. The meager food you've been given is no comfort. Moldy bread, slimy cheese, gray meat, all sustain you barely enough to move, yet each bite risks sickness. Your stomach twists, cramps, and protests, but refusal is not an option. Survival requires endurance, even if it means forcing down a mouthful of something that your senses scream to reject. Every meal becomes a mental battle as well as a physical one. By the small hours, exhaustion becomes a double-edged sword. Your body yearns for rest, yet your mind is alive with terror. Every sound, water dripping, wood creaking, faint whispers, triggers an adrenaline surge that leaves you trembling. You hear footsteps above, slow, deliberate, unexplainable. Are they servants, ghosts, or something else entirely? Your imagination falters at the idea, yet it is as real as the cold biting your bones and the rats scuttling at your feet. Time loses meaning. Hours stretch interminably, a procession of cold, darkness, and terror. The castle's layout, once simple during daylight, now seems infinite. Hallways loop in impossible ways, doors appear where none should exist, shadows twist to forms your rational mind cannot accept. You understand why so many servants and travelers never lasted a full week. The walls are not merely stone, they are memory, malice, and persistent vigilance, demanding attention you do not have the energy to give. Dawn brings no relief, only a dim light filtering through tiny windows, barely warming the damp stone. You are weak, trembling, and haunted, yet the cycle begins anew. Food, labor, vermin, darkness, whispers, and shadows await. You have survived a night, but the castle does not reward survival, it only prepares you for the next trial. Each day and night is a relentless test, stripping away strength, courage, and hope, leaving only the most stubborn will to endure. You finally collapse onto the rough bedding, shivering, exhausted, and nearly broken. The castle's whispers fade only slightly in daylight, but the fear lingers. Your body aches, your mind races, and you realize one undeniable truth: this is life in a medieval castle, stripped to its raw, cruel essence. Survival is measured not in victories or accomplishments, but in endurance, moment by moment, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. And in this ancient fortress, even the bravest soul would falter, for the cold, the vermin, the decay, and the shadows do not forgive. The castle's stone corridors seem alive with history, every crack and crevice whispering secrets of the past. Shadows stretch unnaturally, shifting with flickering torchlight, and every corner seems to hold eyes watching your every movement. You move cautiously, aware that even a minor misstep could have consequences far beyond mere embarrassment. This is a place where the past and present coexist, and the dead are not entirely gone. The servants speak in hushed tones of ghosts that wander the halls at night, souls of nobles betrayed by ambition, of knights who fell in secret duels, and of servants who vanished without trace. You had dismissed these stories as superstition, but the castle has a way of proving you wrong. Just past a hallway, a shadow detaches itself from the wall and glides across the floor, disappearing when you try to focus on it. Your heart pounds, and every instinct tells you to flee, yet fear is only part of the struggle. You must also navigate the castle's treacherous layout and hazards. Pests remain relentless. Rats scuttle over the cold floors, fearless in their exploration. Occasionally, one climbs onto your feet, its tiny claws leaving a burning chill as you jerk away. Vermin are everywhere, hiding in the corners, chewing through food stores, even gnawing at the wood beneath the floors. Survival depends on constant vigilance. You realize that every step, every glance, every breath must be measured, for the castle does not forgive carelessness. Illness creeps silently. Mold and damp have left your throat raw, and your stomach twists from days of consuming questionable food. The small amount of water you drink is often contaminated, and each swallow is a gamble. Your body aches, and every movement is laborious. Hygiene is minimal, and you cannot afford to lower your guard even for washing. Every moment of carelessness could invite lice, infection, or a deeper sickness that the primitive medical remedies here might not remedy. As night falls, the castle becomes even more treacherous. Flickering torches cast grotesque shadows across the walls, and the whispers of long-dead souls rise in the darkness. You hear footsteps above and behind you, slow, deliberate, and unexplained. Your muscles tense, your senses sharpen, and adrenaline floods your veins. You know that in this castle, the line between the living and the dead is blurred, and that shadows and echoes can be as dangerous as any physical threat. The cold is relentless. Even with layers of rough clothing, the chill seeps into your bones, wrapping around every fiber of your being. Water drips from ceilings and seeps from stone walls, making floors slippery and treacherous. One false step could lead to injury, yet you are constantly forced to move, fetching water, searching for food, or avoiding the creatures that share this fortress with you. Every motion is laborious, every breath a struggle, and every hour a reminder of the castle's harshness. Sleep, when it comes, is fragmented. Dreams are haunted by shadowy figures, swarming rats, and whispers that grow louder when your eyes are closed. You awaken trembling, heart racing, and realize that exhaustion is your constant companion. Each day survived is a small victory, but the psychological toll is immense. The castle tests not only your body but your mind, using fear, isolation, and relentless discomfort to wear you down. By dawn, you are hollowed out, physically drained and mentally frayed. Hunger, cold, vermin, and ghosts have combined into a relentless cycle of suffering. The castle offers no reprieve, only the opportunity to endure, if you have the courage and tenacity to do so. Each day is a lesson in vigilance, patience, and survival against relentless adversity. The thought of leaving seems impossible, yet you also know that to remain is to submit to the castle's unyielding authority over life and fear. In these moments, one undeniable truth becomes clear: life within a medieval castle is not the glamorous existence you might imagine. It is raw, relentless, and cruel. The stone walls, the drafts, the pests, the moldy food, and the lingering presence of the dead all serve to remind you that survival here is never guaranteed. Each hour demands focus, endurance, and courage, and even then, the castle might claim you in ways both seen and unseen. The days blur together, each indistinguishable from the last. Cold stone, damp air, and flickering shadows dominate your existence. You awaken to the scratch of rats, the drip of water, and the ever-present chill. Hunger gnaws relentlessly, and the moldy, gray food barely sustains you. Your body aches constantly, yet the castle demands motion, vigilance, and endurance. There is no rest, no reprieve, only survival, measured in small, painful increments. The whispers return at night, louder and more insistent. Voices of long-dead nobles and servants rise from the corridors, murmuring warnings, curses, and fragmented cries. At first, you had tried to rationalize them as imagination, fatigue, or wind moving through cracks. Now, you know better. The castle does not merely house the living, it remembers the dead and forces their presence upon you. Shadows twist and pulse as if alive, sometimes taking shapes that suggest movement, watching you from the corners of your vision. Rats and other vermin remain fearless. They scurry boldly across floors, climb walls, and sometimes approach your bedding directly. Their tiny claws scratch your skin as you jerk awake, heart hammering. You try to ignore them, but they are a constant reminder that you are never alone, and that every corner of this fortress is occupied by creatures adapted to this environment long before your arrival. Their boldness contrasts sharply with your vulnerability, reinforcing the reality that the castle favors the prepared, the hardened, and the alert. Illness is ever present. Mold in the food, damp walls, and contaminated water take their toll. Your stomach twists painfully, your throat feels raw, and every breath carries the faint taste of rot. Hygiene is difficult, and minor wounds quickly become infected. You realize that your body is a fragile vessel in a hostile environment. Even a small mistake, a bite of spoiled meat, a slip on a damp floor, can spiral into a major health crisis. The castle's threats are subtle, slow, and relentless. Nightfall intensifies every fear. Torches flicker, shadows stretch unnaturally, and the whispers of the dead grow stronger. You hear footsteps above, deliberate and slow, echoing through the halls. You cannot tell if they belong to a living soul, a restless spirit, or the castle itself. Your muscles remain tense, ready to react, yet exhaustion drags at you. Sleep comes only in fitful moments, filled with nightmares of swarming rats, collapsing floors, and shadowy figures watching from every corner. The cold penetrates everything. Clothing, bedding, and your own skin provide only minimal warmth. Water drips from ceilings and seeps from walls, making floors slick and treacherous. One misstep could lead to injury, yet you are forced to continue daily tasks, fetching water, foraging for food, and avoiding hazards. Every motion requires concentration, endurance, and awareness, yet even the smallest lapse leaves you exposed to the castle's hidden dangers. By dawn, exhaustion reaches new depths. Hunger, vermin, mold, and darkness have combined into an unrelenting cycle of suffering. You are hollowed out physically and mentally, yet you cling stubbornly to life, aware that each hour survived is a small victory. The castle exacts a toll on the body and mind alike, shaping survival into an unending test of endurance. Every hour teaches patience, vigilance, and the brutal reality that comfort does not exist here. You lie down on the rough bedding, shivering, nauseous, and drained. The shadows stretch across the walls in flickering torchlight, and the whispers persist, faint but unyielding. Even in daylight, the castle's grip remains. The cold, the vermin, the mold, and the lingering presence of the dead do not allow relief. You understand fully now why medieval life was so merciless. Survival is a constant negotiation with the environment itself, with threats both seen and unseen. In the end, the castle imposes its own rhythm. Hunger, cold, decay, and whispers form a continuous loop, shaping every thought, every action, every breath. You have learned that even small victories, eating without sickness, moving without injury, avoiding sleep terrors, are monumental in this world. And yet, no matter how cautious or alert, the castle always finds a way to remind you of your mortality, vulnerability, and the impossibility of true safety. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion, hunger, and fear pressing down. Tomorrow will bring the same trials. There is no escape, no rest, only the endless challenge of survival inside a medieval castle, where every shadow could hide danger, every whisper carries a threat, and every corner reminds you that life here is not a game, it is a relentless battle, and you are its temporary, fragile participant. The castle stretches around you like an endless labyrinth, a stone prison filled with shadows, vermin, and whispers. Each day blends into the next, leaving only the stark rhythm of survival. Hunger gnaws at your belly, the cold seeps into your bones, and the damp air carries the ever-present smell of mold and decay. Sleep is brief and haunted, each moment a delicate balance between exhaustion and terror. Tonight feels different. The shadows are heavier, more deliberate, and the whispers louder. You hear fragments of words, cries, and soft laughter from corridors you thought were empty. You try to rationalize it, fatigue, imagination, the wind, but deep down you know the castle is testing you. Every step is measured, every glance over your shoulder a necessity. The very walls seem alive, watching, remembering, judging. You feel the weight of centuries pressing down on your shoulders, and it is suffocating. Rats move boldly, scuttling across floors and along walls with almost deliberate malice. One jumps near your foot, causing you to leap back, heart hammering. They are fearless, adapted perfectly to this environment. You realize with dread that your presence is an intrusion into their domain. Their audacity is a constant reminder of your vulnerability, and each encounter leaves your nerves raw and frayed. Even in your most cautious movements, you feel exposed. Illness tightens its grip. Moldy food, damp conditions, and cold water take their toll. Your stomach twists painfully, your throat burns, and each movement feels heavy. Minor scratches or cuts become potential sources of infection, and the primitive remedies available in the castle offer only minimal relief. The body's weakness is amplified in this harsh environment, and the line between survival and succumbing feels frighteningly thin. The night is relentless. Shadows twist in unnatural ways, stretching and bending as if with intent. Whispered voices rise and fall, sometimes forming phrases you cannot understand. Steps echo from unseen corners, slow, deliberate, and unnervingly human in cadence, though no one is visible. You cannot tell whether the castle itself is moving or whether spirits roam freely through the halls. The air feels alive, pressing against your skin, cold and damp, tugging at your thoughts, pulling you toward fear and panic. Sleep, when it comes, offers no sanctuary. Dreams are vivid nightmares, swarming rats, collapsing floors, shadowy figures with hollow eyes, and whispers that form incomprehensible commands. Each awakening leaves you trembling, heart racing, mind teetering on the edge of comprehension. The line between dream and reality blurs, and the castle's influence seeps into your thoughts even when you are awake. You realize that survival here is not only physical, it is a test of mental endurance, of the ability to resist the relentless psychological assault. Dawn eventually arrives, faint and weak through narrow windows. Your body is exhausted, but your mind remains alert. You have learned the castle's rhythms, its cold, its vermin, its decaying food, and its whispers. You have adapted, just enough to survive another day, yet the exhaustion is cumulative. Each hour lived within these walls is a battle, and each small victory, avoiding injury, sickness, or sheer panic, is hard-won. You lie down on the rough bedding, shivering and drained. Shadows flicker across the walls as torches burn low, and the whispers continue, faint yet persistent. Rats scurry about, fearless and untamed, and the cold air wraps around your body like a second skin. You understand, fully, that life in a medieval castle is a constant negotiation with fear, discomfort, and danger. There is no luxury, no safety, only the raw, unyielding challenge of surviving in a world that tests every nerve, every instinct, every ounce of courage. By the end of the night, you are hollowed out, yet defiant. Each day survived, each night endured, reinforces one harsh truth: the medieval castle is merciless, a place where survival depends on vigilance, endurance, and mental fortitude. The cold, the rats, the mold, the shadows, and the whispers do not forgive weakness. And yet, you persist. You have not yet succumbed to the castle, but every hour reminds you of its power and its cruelty. This fortress of stone, memory, and ghosts is not merely a building, it is a relentless test, a living entity that challenges your body, mind, and spirit. You understand, in a way impossible to ignore, why no one truly thrives here. Only the alert, the cautious, and the persistent manage to endure, if only for a day, a night, or perhaps a week. The castle's grip tightens with every passing hour. Shadows stretch unnaturally along walls, moving against flickering torchlight in ways that defy reason. Whispers, rising and falling like a tide, carry fragments of old curses, warnings, and incomprehensible phrases. Each sound, each flicker of light, each distant creak presses against your nerves. The castle is no longer merely a building, it is a living entity, testing every inch of your endurance. Hunger is sharper tonight than ever before. The meager portions of hard bread and moldy cheese barely sustain you, and each bite seems to claw at your stomach rather than soothe it. Your muscles ache from constant motion and tension. Even standing is a challenge as exhaustion threatens to collapse you. You know that the slightest lapse in vigilance could mean disaster, a fall on the slick floors, an encounter with the bold rats, or ingestion of spoiled food that might finally topple your body. Rats are everywhere, audacious in their exploration. One scurries across your bed, stopping to sniff at your blanket. You recoil instinctively, your heart hammering in your chest. You realize you are no longer the dominant presence in this environment. Every corner of the castle belongs to creatures adapted to its harsh realities. They know the territory, they move without fear, and you are constantly reminded of your fragility in comparison. The cold has become unbearable. Stone walls draw every ounce of heat from your body. Damp air seeps into clothing and skin alike, chilling you to the bone. Water drips continuously from ceilings, forming small puddles that make each step perilous. Every movement is measured and cautious. Even a simple task, fetching water, avoiding obstacles, or moving through a dark hallway, demands complete focus. The castle is relentless, there is no reprieve, only unending trials. Night falls, and the castle asserts itself fully. Shadows twist into shapes, sometimes seeming to lunge or watch. Whispers grow louder, echoing through corridors, layering with distant footsteps you cannot identify. You strain to distinguish between reality and imagination, but the distinction becomes impossible. The castle toys with your mind, amplifying fatigue, fear, and paranoia, and you understand that this is as dangerous as any physical threat. Sleep is fleeting, haunted by visions of swarming rats, collapsing floors, and ghostly figures with hollow eyes. Every awakening is accompanied by a racing heart, shivering, and an acute awareness of the dark corners surrounding you. The castle forces your body and mind into a continuous state of alertness. Exhaustion and fear blend into a constant ache, leaving you hollow yet vigilant. The air is thick with decay and dampness. Moldy food, contaminated water, and persistent cold weaken your body incrementally. Each cough, each stomach cramp, each ache reminds you of your vulnerability. You realize that survival here is not about strength alone, it is about endurance, patience, and mental fortitude. A single misstep, physical, psychological, or both, could end your struggle entirely. Hours stretch into an almost timeless ordeal. Every creak, drip, and whisper tests your senses. Rats dart across floors, climb walls, and disappear into shadows. The faint outline of figures gliding along corridors vanishes when you try to focus. The castle is alive in ways you cannot fully comprehend. You are trapped in a loop of vigilance, fear, and endurance. By dawn, your body is shattered, your mind frayed, yet you are still alive. Hunger, cold, vermin, and whispers have combined into an unrelenting trial. Each day survived is a victory, yet survival comes at a tremendous cost. You realize fully why medieval castles were as much prisons as fortresses, why few thrived, and why those who endured did so at the limits of human endurance. You lie on the rough bedding, shivering, exhausted, and weary. The flickering torchlight casts elongated shadows, and whispers linger even in daylight. Rats continue their exploration, bold and fearless. The castle remains indifferent to your suffering, a relentless force indifferent to mortality. You have survived yet another cycle, but the ultimate truth remains, life here is an endless challenge. The stone walls, the cold, the vermin, the mold, and the echoes of the dead are constant reminders that you are fragile, that safety is temporary, and that the castle never yields. In this moment, you understand the full weight of the experience. Medieval life within such a fortress is brutal, unyielding, and relentless. Comfort is non-existent, danger is omnipresent, and endurance is measured not in strength but in persistence, vigilance, and the ability to withstand both physical and psychological torment. The castle tests every aspect of being, and to endure it, even for a single day, is to acknowledge the harsh realities of the past and the merciless nature of medieval survival. The days are still cold, the air damp, and the stone walls unyielding, yet slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to adapt. The castle remains a relentless force, its whispers persistent, its rats bold, and its shadows alive with subtle movement. Yet your body and mind, though battered, start recognizing the rhythms of this ancient fortress. You notice patterns, the timing of dripping water, the way shadows shift with torchlight, and the routes rats prefer. Observation becomes a tool, and understanding becomes survival. Hunger still gnaws, yet you have learned to ration, to identify the least spoiled food, and even to extract more from meager portions. Moldy bread is trimmed carefully, cheese is selected with precision, and even the gray meat, once a source of disgust, is approached strategically. Each small decision becomes a conscious battle between instinct and necessity, yet with each correct choice, confidence grows. Survival requires ingenuity as much as endurance, and you start to see the fortress not just as a threat but as a puzzle to be navigated. Rats continue their relentless exploration, yet you begin to anticipate their movements. You learn to step carefully, avoiding areas where they gather, and even find small methods to keep them at bay while you rest. Every scuttle, scratch, and squeak becomes information rather than terror. The vermin, once a source of panic, now serve as indicators of the castle's activity, their paths signaling when a section of corridor is safe to traverse. Fear remains, but it is tempered by knowledge. The cold remains, but your body adapts. You have learned to layer clothing efficiently, to seek the warmest corners of your room, and to move in ways that conserve heat. Damp air is still oppressive, yet you can tolerate it longer. Fatigue is constant, yet your mind begins calculating movements, tasks, and rest more efficiently. Awareness of the castle's moods, its creaks, its drafts, its subtle noises, becomes a form of armor against the constant psychological assault. Night remains a trial, yet adaptation brings small victories. You sleep more alertly, waking at the first hint of unusual noise, learning to differentiate between wind, rats, and footsteps that could belong to either the living or the restless dead. The whispers still fill the corridors, but you begin to interpret patterns, even if meaning remains elusive. Shadows twist as always, yet you move through them with cautious confidence. Each night survived is no longer merely endurance, it is mastery over small, tangible aspects of the environment. Illness and discomfort remain constant. Mold, damp, and spoiled food still challenge your health, yet you have learned to listen to your body more attentively. Minor stomachaches, coughs, or chills are addressed with small preventive measures. You drink carefully, avoid risky morsels, and monitor every bruise or cut. The fortress does not relent, yet you are no longer entirely passive. Adaptation becomes a form of subtle resistance, a negotiation between your body, mind, and the castle's hostility. Through observation and reflection, you gain insight into the castle's rhythms. Dawn brings faint relief, slightly warmer air, brief moments of silence, and the chance to plan your movements for the day. You map corridors mentally, anticipate hazards, and prepare for nightfall. Each day becomes a cycle of vigilance, learning, and survival. You are still exhausted, still haunted, but slowly, the castle seems less like a prison and more like a challenge you can understand, if not entirely overcome. Mentally, you begin to process your fear differently. Where once every whisper and shadow induced panic, now they provoke analysis. Your senses are heightened, yet your mind is calmer, more deliberate. Fear is still present, it must be, but it is tempered by strategy and experience. You realize that adaptation does not mean comfort or safety, only a better chance at surviving another day. Each step, each movement, each small victory is now a conscious act, not merely reaction. By the end of this day, a strange form of resilience takes root. You are still vulnerable, still exposed, yet your understanding of the castle allows you to move with purpose rather than terror. The cold, the rats, the mold, and the whispers have not lessened, but your ability to navigate, anticipate, and endure has grown. You feel a grim satisfaction in this subtle mastery. Survival is still painful, frightening, and exhausting, yet it is no longer entirely passive. Days and nights pass, but now they feel less like an unending torment and more like a challenge to be understood. The castle is still cold, damp, and filled with vermin, yet you have begun to anticipate its rhythms. The drip of water from ceilings, the scuttling of rats along corridors, and even the subtle creaks of floorboards all provide information. Observation is no longer optional, it is survival. You move through the fortress with cautious efficiency, learning which paths are safest and which corners to avoid. Your body, though weary, has adapted to the constant cold. Layers of clothing, learned positioning in corners, and strategic movement reduce discomfort. Fatigue remains, yet you conserve energy by calculating each task. The drafty corridors no longer feel entirely oppressive, they are obstacles you can navigate, not enemies that dominate. The harsh air, once agonizing, has become a constant companion you have learned to manage. Food is still scarce and often unpleasant, but your approach has become strategic. You identify mold-free bread, select the least spoiled cheese, and ration every scrap of gray meat. Even the smallest morsel is evaluated for both nutritional value and risk. Each meal is no longer a moment of fear but a calculated act of survival. You have learned patience and prudence, realizing that endurance is as much about planning as it is about physical stamina. Rats and other vermin, while still bold, are no longer purely terrifying. Their paths through the castle provide clues about activity and danger. You notice patterns in their movement and use them to navigate hallways more safely. Fear is still present, but tempered by understanding. Observation and strategic thinking have replaced panic with cautious confidence. You are learning not just to survive, but to coexist, however uncomfortably, with the creatures that share the castle. The whispers, ever present and unnerving, have become something you can analyze. Though meaning is elusive, patterns are evident. Certain sounds precede events, steps, scurrying, or drafts. You have learned to interpret these auditory cues as warnings rather than mere hauntings. Shadows continue to twist and pulse, but your mind is trained to read them as information rather than simply threats. Knowledge and attention provide a measure of control in an environment designed to dominate. Night remains the greatest test, yet adaptation has forged a new resilience. Sleep comes in more strategic intervals, with one eye open, ears tuned to the slightest sound. You awaken before danger fully manifests, prepared to react. Dreams are still haunted, but your waking awareness allows you to process them without panic. The castle's psychological trials are ongoing, yet your mind now operates with deliberate focus, translating fear into alertness. Illness and discomfort are still companions, yet you manage them more effectively. Minor aches and chills are addressed through careful movement, limited exertion, and attention to warmth. You monitor stomach cramps, cuts, and coughs more vigilantly. Awareness of your body's signals has become crucial, and even the smallest act of self-care becomes a strategic step toward survival. Adaptation is not comfort, it is control over what little is manageable in an environment otherwise designed to punish weakness. By the end of the day, a sense of mastery begins to emerge. The castle remains merciless, but you navigate it with purpose. Each corner turned, each shadow observed, and each morsel consumed is a calculated act. Survival is no longer passive endurance, it is active engagement with the fortress and its perils. The cold, the rats, the mold, and the whispers remain, yet your understanding transforms them from chaotic threats into manageable elements. You realize now that the castle does not merely test strength, it tests patience, observation, and mental acuity. Every hour lived is a negotiation, every day endured a testament to adaptability. You are still vulnerable, still exposed, yet there is satisfaction in the knowledge that you have learned to coexist with fear and discomfort. Survival here is not a temporary state but a learned art, honed through observation, endurance, and careful reflection. In these moments, the castle has become a teacher. Its cruelty is relentless, yet it has forced a new understanding, that even in the harshest, most unforgiving environments, adaptation, awareness, and strategic action provide a path to endurance. Each day survived is a silent victory, each night endured a demonstration of human resilience. You have not conquered the castle, but you have learned to survive within it, and that is its own form of mastery. The castle stretches endlessly around you, unchanged in its cold, damp, and oppressive presence. The shadows remain long, twisting in flickering torchlight, and the whispers of the dead are constant companions. Yet, now, you move with a deliberate awareness. Your senses, honed by countless nights and days of observation, scan every corner, every corridor, and every crevice. You anticipate danger and discomfort before they appear. Survival has become a rhythm, and you follow it with cautious precision. Hunger and scarcity continue to challenge you. Moldy bread, gray meat, and slimy cheese remain staples, but your approach to food is calculated. You ration every bite, assess spoilage with careful attention, and avoid unnecessary risk. Each meal is no longer a moment of panic but an act of strategic planning. The castle tests patience as much as it tests the body, and you have learned to bend your instincts to match its harsh demands. The rats, once a source of terror, now provide signals. Their movement warns of approaching dangers, empty corridors, or areas to avoid. They are as much guides as threats. By observing their behavior, you learn when it is safe to traverse certain hallways and when you should remain still. Fear persists, yet knowledge tempers it, transforming instinctive panic into calculated response. Cold remains, but you endure it with layered clothing and careful movement. Drafts are anticipated, corners with warmth are sought out, and every task is timed to conserve energy. Exhaustion lingers, yet your body has adapted to tolerate longer stretches of discomfort. You are still vulnerable, still exposed, yet you move with a confidence born of experience. Night, the castle's most formidable test, comes again. Shadows twist and pulse, and whispers rise in complex patterns. Steps echo in empty corridors, sometimes human, sometimes spectral. You awaken with trained vigilance, anticipating every sound. Dreams remain haunted, but you interpret them as mental exercises rather than threats. The castle's psychological grip is formidable, yet your adaptation has forged resilience. Fear is present, but it is controlled. Illness continues to threaten, yet careful attention has minimized its impact. Cuts, scratches, and stomach aches are monitored, and hydration and food intake are carefully managed. Your body is a fragile vessel, yet awareness and strategy have transformed it into a tool for endurance. The castle tests physical limits, but your mind now anticipates, mitigates, and directs each action toward survival. By mid-cycle of night, exhaustion is profound, yet you remain alert. The whispers, shadows, and scuttling of vermin are constant, but they no longer paralyze you. Each sensation is observed, interpreted, and integrated into your response. You understand the patterns and rhythms of the fortress, and this understanding provides a thin layer of mastery over your surroundings. Survival is no longer merely reactive, it is proactive. As dawn slowly filters through narrow windows, you feel the culmination of experience. Your body aches, your mind is frayed, yet you have endured another cycle. The castle's cold, decay, rats, and whispers remain, yet your ability to navigate them has grown stronger. Each day survived is a triumph of strategy, patience, and endurance. You realize the full weight of medieval existence in such a fortress, brutal, unyielding, and unforgiving. You reflect on the journey. The castle has tested every aspect of your being, physical stamina, mental fortitude, alertness, and patience. Its walls, cold and indifferent, have imposed relentless trials. You have learned to adapt, to anticipate, and to endure. Fear has not disappeared, yet it has transformed into vigilance. Vulnerability remains, but mastery of small victories has become a daily reality. By the end of this cycle, a profound understanding emerges: the medieval castle is merciless, yet survival within it is possible through awareness, strategy, and resilience. Every step, every movement, every careful decision reinforces a singular truth: endurance, not comfort, defines life here. The fortress remains dominant, but you have learned to navigate its cruelty, and that alone is a testament to human perseverance. The castle, with its cold stone walls, persistent damp, and ever-present shadows, has become a relentless teacher. You have walked its corridors countless times, listened to its whispers, avoided its traps, and endured its relentless assaults on body and mind. Each day was a battle, each night a test of endurance, yet here you are, still alive, still aware, still learning. Survival is no longer passive, it is a skill, hard-won through observation, vigilance, and adaptation. Hunger, though still gnawing, has become a manageable challenge. You have learned which foods to consume, how to ration them, and how to avoid the deadliest spoilage. Even moldy bread and gray meat, once a source of panic, are now approached with careful strategy. Each meal is a decision, an assessment of risk versus necessity, and your body has learned to accept them as sustenance rather than punishment. Rats, which once invoked terror, now serve as subtle guides. Their movements indicate danger, pathways, and safe zones. You anticipate their paths, predict their behavior, and move with calculated caution. Fear remains, but it is now accompanied by knowledge. The vermin have become part of the castle's rhythm, signals in a dangerous world. You navigate corridors not just to survive but to coexist with these creatures that have adapted perfectly to this environment. Cold is still biting, but your body has adjusted. Layers of clothing, careful positioning, and strategic movement allow you to conserve heat. Exhaustion lingers, yet your mind has learned to operate efficiently under constant discomfort. The castle remains hostile, yet your body and mind have adapted to endure it. Night continues to challenge you. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers rise in impossible harmonies, and footsteps echo in empty corridors. You awaken with vigilance, prepared to interpret every sound and shadow. Sleep is still fragmented, haunted by nightmares of rats, collapsing floors, and ghostly figures, but your reactions are deliberate rather than panic-driven. The castle's psychological assaults have forged resilience, and your mind now translates fear into strategy. Illness and discomfort remain constant threats. Mold, damp, and spoiled food strain your body, yet careful attention to hydration, food, and minor injuries has mitigated their impact. Your body, though weakened, has learned endurance. You recognize every ache, cramp, and chill as a signal to adjust, to survive, and to remain alert. Awareness and subtle control are your tools against the relentless trials imposed by this fortress. By this point, a profound understanding has emerged. The castle is merciless, indifferent, and unchanging, yet survival is possible through observation, patience, and strategy. Every step, every cautious movement, every calculated decision contributes to endurance. You have learned that comfort does not exist here, that safety is fleeting, and that every day lived is a small triumph over the fortress's relentless cruelty. Reflection becomes possible as you navigate your final nights. Fear has not vanished, but it has transformed. You move with purpose, confidence, and awareness. Shadows, whispers, and rats remain, but you interpret them as information, cues in a hazardous environment. The castle has tested every aspect of your being, physical stamina, mental fortitude, patience, and vigilance, and you have emerged, not unscathed, but informed and resilient. Dawn arrives once again, casting pale light through narrow windows. The cold, damp, and decay persist, yet you take a moment to acknowledge the journey. Each day survived, each night endured, has shaped your understanding of medieval life, harsh, unforgiving, and perilous. Survival is a constant negotiation with fear, discomfort, and uncertainty, and endurance becomes a measure of skill as much as luck. Finally, you understand the ultimate truth of life within this fortress: survival is not about comfort or safety. It is about endurance, observation, and the willingness to adapt. Fear, cold, vermin, and whispers remain constant, but knowledge and vigilance transform them from insurmountable threats into manageable challenges. You have survived where few would, and that endurance itself is the highest achievement the castle allows. The castle stretches endlessly around you, unchanged in its oppressive presence, yet each day spent within its walls adds a layer of understanding. Shadows have become familiar companions, their twisting movements signaling both threat and guidance. You move with deliberate care, aware of every corner, every floorboard, and every draft. The castle is merciless, yet your awareness transforms its chaos into a map of survival. Hunger continues its relentless assault, but now it is tempered by careful strategy. Food is scarce, moldy, and unappealing, yet you approach it with experience. Moldy bread is trimmed precisely, cheese is examined for spoilage, and gray meat is assessed with cautious precision. Every bite is a conscious decision, a negotiation between risk and necessity. Your body has learned to extract what little nourishment is available, and your mind has learned to anticipate the consequences of every choice. Rats, constant and brazen, scuttle along walls and floors. Their movements once inspired panic, but now you read them as signals. Paths they avoid mark danger, paths they frequent mark temporary safety. You have learned to coexist with these creatures, to anticipate their behavior, and to use them as guides through the labyrinthine corridors. Fear remains, yet it is tempered by understanding. The castle's inhabitants are not solely the living, the vermin are part of its ecosystem, and you have learned to navigate both with care. Cold persists, as biting and unrelenting as ever. Stone walls draw heat from your body, and damp air seeps into every layer of clothing. Yet you have learned strategies to conserve warmth, careful layering, moving only when necessary, and seeking corners shielded from drafts. Fatigue is constant, yet your body adapts. Small movements, deliberate pacing, and controlled exertion prevent collapse. You are still vulnerable, yet endurance has become instinct. Night is no longer merely a time of terror, it is a challenge to be met. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers rise and fall in eerie patterns, and the occasional footstep echoes in empty halls. You awaken at the slightest sound, ready to respond. Dreams remain haunted, yet they are processed deliberately, their lessons internalized. The castle's psychological assaults are ongoing, but you have learned to counter them with awareness, turning fear into a tool for vigilance. Illness and discomfort remain formidable, yet you manage them with increasing efficiency. Minor aches, cuts, and stomach cramps are attended to with careful observation. Water and food intake are monitored, hygiene is maintained as best as possible, and your body responds to careful attention. Adaptation is no longer merely survival, it is strategy, a set of learned behaviors designed to extend life in an environment that constantly seeks to end it. By mid-cycle of night, exhaustion weighs heavily, yet your senses remain alert. Every whisper, every shadow, every scuttling rat provides information. You move through the castle not blindly, but with intention. Knowledge and anticipation replace panic, though the environment remains unforgiving. Each corridor traversed, each corner navigated, is a victory of observation and experience over the castle's cruelty. Dawn brings a faint relief, a brief pause in the relentless trial. Sunlight filtering through narrow windows is weak and pale, yet it illuminates patterns you have memorized, the safest pathways, areas to avoid, and temporary shelters against cold and vermin. Each day survived reinforces the lessons learned, endurance, observation, and strategy are your allies. The castle remains indifferent, yet you have begun to impose a form of order upon its chaos through understanding. As you rest for brief moments, you reflect on the journey. The castle has tested your body, mind, and spirit. Its cold, dampness, vermin, mold, and whispers have pushed you to your limits, yet each challenge has been a lesson. Survival here is measured not by comfort or safety, but by vigilance, patience, and strategic thought. The fortress remains merciless, yet you have adapted, learned, and endured. In these moments of reflection, the castle teaches its final lesson for the day: fear is constant, danger is ubiquitous, but endurance is possible. Your body remains weary, your mind alert, and your spirit resilient. The castle has not relented, yet you have grown in understanding, mastery, and patience. Each day is a negotiation, and each night is a trial, but through observation, strategy, and perseverance, survival remains within your grasp. By nightfall, you are ready once more. The castle's shadows, whispers, and vermin continue their dance of menace, yet you face them with hard-earned resilience. Each sound, movement, and draft is interpreted with precision. You move through darkness with caution and purpose, knowing that survival depends on every decision. You have adapted, observed, and endured, and for now, that is enough. The castle's oppressive walls and cold, damp corridors are no longer just physical obstacles, they are trials for your mind. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers echo in eerie, repeating patterns, and the scuttling of vermin is constant. Your body is fatigued, yet your mind is alert, trained to interpret every sound, every movement, every subtle change in the environment. Survival is no longer merely about avoiding physical threats, it is about controlling your fear, your thoughts, and your reactions. Hunger gnaws persistently, but you have learned to compartmentalize it. Each bite of moldy bread, each sip of tepid water, is approached with strategic thought. You ration carefully, considering both immediate necessity and long-term endurance. The castle has forced you to think in terms of survival calculus, how to balance risk, energy, and nutrition to extend life one day at a time. Each decision sharpens your focus and reinforces the lesson that the mind is as crucial as the body. Rats remain constant companions, their behavior signaling dangers and opportunities alike. You have learned to predict their movements, to avoid areas they frequent, and to use them as guides in the dark labyrinthine corridors. Fear is still present, but it is tempered by observation and knowledge. You have discovered that the mind can impose a measure of control even in an environment that is otherwise uncontrollable. The cold is relentless, seeping into bone and muscle, yet your mind has developed coping strategies. You focus on controlled breathing, on moving efficiently to conserve warmth, and on planning tasks to minimize exposure. Mental fortitude has become as important as physical endurance. Fatigue is constant, but your awareness allows you to operate effectively despite it. The castle tests every aspect of your being, and the mind becomes the tool that mediates between danger and survival. Night, with its twisting shadows and echoing whispers, is now approached with deliberate caution. You awaken at the slightest unusual sound, interpreting it carefully rather than reacting impulsively. Dreams remain haunted, yet you analyze them as exercises in awareness. Every shadow, every whisper, becomes information rather than mere terror. Your mind has learned to convert fear into vigilance, to extract lessons from discomfort, and to maintain control despite exhaustion. Illness and physical discomfort continue, yet mental resilience allows you to manage them more effectively. Every ache, cramp, or chill is a signal to adjust, to conserve energy, and to protect your body. Awareness of your mental state becomes as vital as attention to your physical condition. You understand that panic is dangerous, that despair can be deadly, and that endurance is a function of both body and mind. By mid-cycle of night, exhaustion is profound, yet your mental focus remains sharp. The castle's relentless whispers, shadows, and vermin are interpreted strategically. Every sound, every movement, every subtle environmental cue is analyzed and used to guide action. Knowledge and awareness replace panic, and vigilance becomes second nature. Survival is no longer merely reactive, it is proactive, controlled, and deliberate. Dawn brings brief relief, pale light illuminating corridors you now navigate with practiced care. You move deliberately, avoiding danger, monitoring vermin, and conserving energy. Each day survived reinforces your mental resilience. The castle remains merciless, yet you have imposed a measure of order through observation, strategy, and awareness. Survival is now as much about psychological endurance as physical stamina. As you pause to rest, reflection becomes inevitable. You understand the castle's lessons: fear is constant, discomfort unavoidable, and danger omnipresent. Yet the mind can impose control, can interpret threats, and can create strategies to navigate even the harshest environments. Endurance is mental as much as physical, and mastery over fear is a skill honed through experience. Finally, you recognize a profound truth: life in the castle is brutal, unforgiving, and relentless, yet resilience is possible. Each night endured, each shadow navigated, and each rationed meal is a testament to the power of observation, strategic thinking, and mental fortitude. The fortress remains merciless, yet within its walls, the mind has become a weapon and a shield. The castle has become more than a physical prison, it is a relentless test of mental endurance. Each shadow seems to twist deliberately, each whisper carries hidden menace, and the scuttling of rats is constant, unpredictable, and unnerving. Your body is fatigued, your muscles ache, and your stomach protests every moldy morsel, yet it is your mind that is the true battleground. Survival now depends not only on observation and strategy, but on unwavering mental fortitude. Fear is a constant companion. Yet you have learned to treat it as information rather than a signal of helplessness. Every echo, every movement, every faint draft becomes data. The castle's relentless attempts to unnerve you are met with deliberate analysis. You interpret the twisting shadows, noting patterns in their movement. You listen to whispers, identifying the rhythm and timing. Each small observation transforms terror into preparedness. Hunger gnaws, but the mind has learned to ration worry as carefully as food. Moldy bread is scrutinized, cheese is examined with careful precision, and gray meat is approached with deliberate caution. Every bite is weighed for necessity versus risk. Starvation is a threat, but calculation mitigates the danger. Your mental resilience allows you to accept discomfort and channel it into deliberate action. Rats, once harbingers of fear, have become guides. Their erratic paths through the corridors reveal areas to avoid and those temporarily safe. You anticipate their movements, adjusting your own path accordingly. Each scuttle is now interpreted as a signal, each squeak a potential warning. Fear persists, but knowledge tempers it. The mind now functions as the ultimate survival tool, reading, predicting, and navigating the castle's constant chaos. The cold, ever bitten and damp, tests your body relentlessly. But your mental endurance transforms each shiver into a signal: move, conserve heat, layer clothing, seek corners. Exhaustion is persistent, yet the mind enforces control over physical limits. You calculate every action, every breath, every movement to maximize survival. The castle's merciless climate has been internalized, and adaptation has become instinctual. Night is an unending trial of vigilance. Shadows stretch impossibly, whispers rise and fall with a sinister cadence, and unseen footsteps echo ominously. You awaken at the slightest disturbance, analyzing every sound. Dreams are haunted, but no longer paralyzing, they are now mental exercises in awareness. Your mind has learned to distinguish between illusion and reality, to act decisively, and to maintain composure in the face of relentless terror. Illness, aches, and chills persist, yet your mind manages them as efficiently as physical threats. Each pang is noted, each weakness anticipated, each minor injury mitigated with careful attention. Awareness and reflection have become survival tools as essential as food or warmth. Mental acuity now dictates physical strategy, dictating every choice and action. By the midpoint of night, exhaustion presses heavily, yet your mind remains alert, sharper than your worn body. Every whisper, shadow, and movement is interpreted strategically. Knowledge and vigilance replace panic. The castle's constant psychological assault is met with calculated endurance. Survival is no longer reactive, it is deliberate, proactive, and guided by awareness. Dawn arrives, weak and pale, illuminating corridors you now traverse with careful efficiency. Observation, strategy, and experience guide every step. The castle remains hostile, but you have imposed an internal order, using knowledge and awareness to carve a fragile space of control within the chaos. Each day survived reinforces the importance of mental resilience. Reflection brings clarity. The castle has tested every aspect of your being: strength, endurance, observation, and patience, but most of all, it has tested your mind. Fear, discomfort, and uncertainty are constants, yet your strategic awareness and mental discipline have allowed you to survive. Survival in the castle is not merely a matter of physical endurance, it is the triumph of deliberate thought and measured response over chaos and terror. Finally, you recognize the ultimate truth: within these merciless walls, the mind is the most vital instrument. Shadows, whispers, vermin, and cold remain threats, yet mental fortitude turns them into signals and tools. Endurance is no longer accidental, it is cultivated, sharpened, and honed. Every day survived is proof that even in the harshest environments, human awareness and intelligence can prevail against seemingly insurmountable odds. The castle looms around you with unyielding cruelty. Cold seeps into bone, dampness clings to skin, and every step carries the threat of injury or collapse. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers echo endlessly, and rats scuttle brazenly along floors and walls. You are exhausted, yet survival demands that you move with precision, awareness, and endurance. This is the final physical trial, where every instinct, every strategy, and every ounce of strength is tested. Hunger is more severe than ever. Moldy bread is rationed, cheese is inspected carefully, and gray meat is approached with caution. Each morsel is a calculated act of necessity. The castle offers no comfort, no indulgence, only the barest sustenance to extend life. You chew slowly, savoring minimal nourishment while preserving energy for the constant labor of survival. Your body is pushed to its limits, yet you continue, driven by the unrelenting need to endure. Rats, constant and brazen, are both nuisance and guide. Their movement signals which paths are risky, which areas are temporarily safe, and when to pause or proceed. Fear is present, but knowledge tempers it. You anticipate their behavior, navigate around them carefully, and even use their patterns to plan your route. The vermin, relentless and ever-present, are no longer merely obstacles, they are part of the environment you have learned to interpret and exploit. Cold pierces deeper now, relentless and unyielding. Stone floors and walls drain heat from your body, and damp air saturates every layer of clothing. You conserve energy with every movement, huddle in corners when possible, and seek the few warm spots the castle allows. Exhaustion is pervasive, yet awareness and calculation maintain your efficiency. Every decision, from where to step to when to rest, is critical for survival. Night brings its familiar terrors, but with greater intensity. Shadows twist with almost malevolent intent, whispers rise in maddening cycles, and the sound of distant footsteps evokes panic. Sleep is scarce, fragmented, haunted by nightmares of collapse, vermin, and unseen figures. Yet your mind, sharpened through countless nights, remains vigilant. Every sound is analyzed, every shadow interpreted, and every movement calculated. Fear is present, but now it is a tool, guiding precise reactions rather than paralyzing you. Illness and discomfort continue to press against your endurance. Minor aches, cramps, and chills test your body relentlessly, but careful management has mitigated their worst effects. Hydration, minimal nutrition, and monitoring of injuries are more critical than ever. Each pang of discomfort is a signal to adjust, conserve, and act. Awareness of your physical state is now as essential as observation of the castle itself. By the middle of the night, fatigue is profound, yet your movements remain deliberate. Every corridor traversed, every staircase climbed, every draft avoided is a conscious calculation. The castle's hostility is at its peak, yet your adaptation allows a measure of control. You understand the environment, anticipate hazards, and navigate with precision. Each small success is a victory against a fortress designed to destroy. Dawn arrives with pale light filtering through narrow windows. Exhaustion presses heavily, yet the castle's lessons remain clear: survival is endurance, observation, and calculated action. Every step, every rationed meal, every measured movement is proof that adaptation has prevailed over chaos. You are still vulnerable, yet the ability to interpret signals, anticipate danger, and act decisively defines life within these walls. Reflection becomes unavoidable. The castle has tested every aspect of your being: strength, endurance, awareness, and patience, but most of all, it has pushed your body to its limits. Physical survival is no longer a matter of mere stamina, it is a combination of vigilance, strategy, and careful management of every resource. The fortress is merciless, yet you have learned to endure its harshest trials. As night falls again, shadows and whispers intensify. The vermin move boldly, the drafts bite sharply, and the walls seem to press closer. Yet you are prepared. Every sound is interpreted, every movement anticipated. Physical endurance, honed through relentless trials, now meets psychological vigilance. Survival is no longer accidental, it is deliberate, informed, and meticulously managed. By the end of this night, a grim understanding emerges: the castle's cruelty is absolute, but resilience, strategy, and observation have transformed you into a survivor. The final physical trial is not yet over, yet you face it with a combination of experience, calculation, and hardened endurance. Every hour lived is a triumph over environment, body, and fear. The fortress remains merciless, yet within its walls, human perseverance prevails. The castle has become a relentless crucible, testing every ounce of your strength, endurance, and mental fortitude. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers echo with uncanny precision, and rats scuttle brazenly across the stone floors. Hunger gnaws more fiercely than ever, cold pierces deeper into bone, and every movement demands focus. You are pushed to the edge, where fatigue and fear threaten to overwhelm reason, yet survival insists on vigilance. Food is scarce and unappealing, yet every morsel is carefully considered. Moldy bread is trimmed to remove the worst, cheese is examined meticulously, and gray meat is approached with caution. Each bite is a calculated act of necessity, a negotiation between risk and survival. Hunger is relentless, yet your mind converts it into focus, a drive to navigate the castle's hazards with precision. Every calorie conserved, every rationed bite is a step toward enduring another day. Rats, once symbols of terror, are now integral to your survival strategy. Their unpredictable paths provide insight into the safest routes and the most dangerous corridors. You anticipate their movements, adjust your path accordingly, and use them as guides in an environment otherwise dominated by chaos. Fear persists, but it is now coupled with observation, turning panic into actionable knowledge. The cold is a constant, gnawing companion. Stone walls and floors draw heat relentlessly from your body, and damp air seeps into every layer of clothing. You conserve energy through measured movement, huddling when possible, seeking corners shielded from drafts, and timing every action carefully. Physical fatigue is profound, yet your mind enforces control, transforming exhaustion into calculated endurance. Night is a continuous trial of vigilance. Shadows shift in impossible patterns, whispers rise and fall like the tide, and the echo of distant footsteps unnerves even the most prepared mind. Sleep is scarce and broken, haunted by nightmares of collapsing floors, vermin, and ghostly figures. Yet you respond with deliberate awareness, interpreting each sound and shadow strategically. Fear is present, but you have learned to use it, converting dread into alertness and action. Illness and minor injuries continue to press against your body. Cuts, scrapes, chills, and cramps remind you of fragility, yet careful monitoring mitigates risk. Hydration, minimal nutrition, and attention to wounds are crucial. The mind has become the primary survival tool, guiding physical action with precision. Awareness and reflection are as vital as strength or endurance. By the middle of the night, exhaustion is almost unbearable. Muscles ache, joints stiffen, and the body cries for rest, yet you continue. Every corridor, every stair, every draft-ridden hallway is navigated with careful calculation. Knowledge and observation replace panic. Each decision is deliberate, every movement intentional. The castle's cruelty is unrelenting, yet experience, awareness, and mental fortitude grant a fragile measure of control. Dawn brings a brief reprieve, weak light filtering through narrow windows. You pause, acknowledging the survival accomplished thus far. Every hour endured, every shadow interpreted, every rationed meal, every careful movement has forged endurance. The castle remains merciless, yet your mastery of its trials, both physical and mental, is evident. You are still vulnerable, yet experience and resilience have transformed vulnerability into cautious capability. Reflection deepens your understanding. The castle is a world without mercy, hunger, cold, vermin, mold, shadows, and whispers are constant threats. Yet you have discovered that endurance is not mere physical survival, it is the synthesis of observation, strategy, vigilance, and mental discipline. Fear is constant, yet manageable, discomfort is inevitable, yet navigable, danger is ubiquitous, yet predictable through careful attention. Survival is no longer a chance, it is a product of learned resilience. As night descends once more, you prepare for the final stretch. Shadows twist more violently, whispers grow more insistent, and vermin are bold in their movements. Yet you meet them with hard-earned knowledge and endurance. Physical strength, mental resilience, and strategic awareness converge. Every movement, every breath, every decision is deliberate. Survival is no longer reactive, it is mastery of the trials imposed by the castle. By the end of this night, a profound realization emerges: you have reached the edge of endurance, yet you persist. The castle's cruelty has not diminished, yet through vigilance, strategy, and resilience, you have transformed fear into capability, chaos into information, and exhaustion into deliberate action. Each moment survived is a triumph of human perseverance against a seemingly insurmountable environment. The castle has tested everything: your body, your mind, your spirit. Cold has seeped into bone, dampness has clung relentlessly to skin and clothing, and hunger has gnawed constantly at your resolve. Rats, shadows, whispers, and mold have pressed upon you at every turn, yet here you are, still moving, still observing, still enduring. You have reached the final phase of survival, where every lesson, every adaptation, and every ounce of resilience is put to the ultimate test. Hunger remains, but it has become manageable. Each rationed bite of bread, each piece of gray meat, every sip of tepid water is calculated with precision. You no longer eat for comfort or pleasure, there is none, but for survival. Every calorie consumed, every morsel carefully rationed, has prolonged life and strengthened resolve. The castle offers no mercy, no indulgence, yet each act of careful sustenance is a victory over scarcity itself. Rats continue their brazen courses along floors and walls. Where once they inspired terror, now they are guides, indicators of safe paths and dangerous areas. You anticipate their movements, integrate their patterns into your navigation, and coexist with them as part of the castle ecosystem. Observation, knowledge, and adaptability have turned former threats into allies of sorts, teaching lessons that extend beyond instinctive fear. Cold is as biting as ever, yet your body has adapted. Layers of clothing, careful pacing, and strategic use of warmth allow you to maintain endurance. Fatigue presses heavily on muscles, joints, and bones, yet the mind enforces careful control over movement, maximizing energy and minimizing exposure. The body is tested relentlessly, but strategy and awareness convert vulnerability into survival. Night descends with all its familiar horrors. Shadows twist unnaturally, whispers rise in patterns both familiar and disorienting, and the castle seems alive with unseen presence. Sleep remains fractured, haunted by nightmares of collapse, vermin, and ghostly figures. Yet you move with deliberate focus, every step a calculated act. Fear is present but harnessed, converted into vigilance and precise action. The mind has become the most vital instrument of survival, and it functions with unerring clarity in the castle's oppressive darkness. Illness and minor injuries continue to press against endurance. Cuts, bruises, cramps, and chills demand attention, yet careful monitoring, rationed nutrition, and controlled movement minimize their impact. Awareness of the body's limits, and respect for them, has become essential. Survival is no longer about reckless action, it is deliberate, informed, and disciplined. Every decision is measured, every action purposeful. By the middle of the night, exhaustion reaches its peak. The castle's cruelty is absolute, every corridor, staircase, and draft-ridden hallway is a test. Yet your experience, observation, and strategy sustain you. Each movement is deliberate, every shadow interpreted, every sound analyzed. Chaos and fear exist, yet mastery through knowledge and vigilance allows survival. Every hour lived is a triumph of human adaptability over a harsh and indifferent environment. Dawn arrives with pale, weak light filtering through narrow windows. You pause to reflect, the significance of your endurance crystallizing. Every day survived, every night endured, every shadow navigated, every rationed bite of food, every avoided draft, every interaction with rats has forged resilience. The castle is unchanging, merciless, and indifferent, yet you have learned to exist within it. You have endured where few could, and every aspect of your being has been tested and refined. Reflection brings understanding. The medieval castle is brutal, unforgiving, and relentless. Comfort is absent, safety fleeting, and every day is a negotiation with hunger, cold, disease, fear, and the unknown. Yet endurance is possible through observation, strategy, vigilance, and mental fortitude. The castle has not granted you mercy, yet it has taught you mastery of its trials. Survival is not a product of chance, it is the result of learned resilience and deliberate action. Finally, you recognize the ultimate truth: life in a medieval castle is harsh beyond imagination, yet human adaptability, intelligence, and perseverance can prevail. Shadows, whispers, vermin, cold, and hunger remain constant threats, yet through observation, careful strategy, and mental discipline, survival is achieved. You have endured, adapted, and mastered the challenges that would have overwhelmed most.